It is the Dynasty Roundtable live on the Player Profiler YouTube channel. I'm here with Matt Babich. Sometimes you need to play, you just need to we just need to have a show with just us two because sometimes, we have guests, which we'll have guests. Like we got all sorts of amazing guests like Dan Williamson and John Lobb's going to be coming on the show next week. So you're not going to want to miss that. We're going to continue our rookie conversation. But tonight on the channel, I figured we have all these people entering these startups and we're getting ready for startup season. And I thought it would be a good chance to revisit Dynasty startup strategy, some basics, some things maybe that you didn't know. And then we're going to get into my favorite strategy. I think it's the best strategy if you can pull it off. Matt, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about too. And last offseason, we were kind of talking about this as we were doing our own dynasty startup, kind of in the moment. And now we have a year to reflect on the decisions we made in those times and kind of get to rehash our startup strategy talk again. So this is always a fun topic.
So we'll get him right into it. At the end, you'll actually see. I think we're gonna have time for it. We'll see. I'm gonna try to be brief tonight, but we'll actually take a look at a team that I actually implemented this strategy on. Not in not too many places, I think. They'll talk about the strategy, but they won't tell you how it went. And honestly, it did not go as well as I would have liked, and we'll get into that later. But why don't we just start the show, man? And why don't we get into it? Dynasty startup strategy. If there's time, we'll answer. We'll try to get to as many of your comments and questions as possible as well. The show starts right now. So it's one of the most magical times of the year. You've entered a dynasty startup draft. And to me, like, it doesn't really matter, at least for me, whether it's $10, $15. I'm in leagues where it's $100 buy-in. Like and Theo Grimminger would probably laugh at me.
Laugh at that.
My highest dollar dynasty startup or dynasty league is I think $225. And just for full transparency, I'm in 29 dynasty leagues. 29, which I tell my friends, and I don't know if anybody's had this experience, telling your friends how many fantasy leagues you're in, and they go, wait a minute, you're in how many fantasy leagues? I'm in and most people are like, I'm in 2 and I can barely keep track of 2 leagues. It's like, well, sorry, you're not on my level. I mean, and then they're like, how can you be in so many leagues? I'm like, because I love it, dude. I don't know. Like, some people like to collect cars. Some people like to go on lavish vacations. Some people like to, go out to eat. Like, they're foodies. I don't know. They have all different hobbies. My hobby's fantasy football. This is what I love to do. This is my hobby. This is it. And so this is like probably my favorite topic to talk about tonight. So I want to get right into it. And I know, Matt, you're in several leagues too. So we're coming at you from, some level of expertise, I feel, after, I've been playing Dynasty for 7 years now. So, Matt, I'm going to kick it to you. What are some things you can do before the Dynasty startup even starts to help prepare yourself to be as successful as possible?
Yeah, so I think the first step is understanding your league settings. And that's the number one thing you need to have down before you do anything else, because league settings are going to affect your player rankings, how you're going to evaluate your picks. Depending on how in tune you are with rookie classes, it could even shake up the way you draft, set up your dynasty team for the long term. So understanding the league rules is one. Are you in tight end premium, super flex, standard? Do you have funky bonuses for yardage? There's a lot of things to consider there. And then once you understand your league settings, then you can formulate a set of rankings. And so myself personally, if I were to try and build rankings from scratch, I would forget people. I would have to change the order up after remembering somebody, and it would be a mess. So I like referencing, you can find your own favorite websites rankings. I personally will endorse the Player Profiler Dynasty rankings, mostly because they give you the lifetime value that is calculated. And so that even gives you a reference point for tiers. And then you get yourself a little frame of reference that you trust. And then you start to move the pieces around as you go. And that way you'll discover major discrepancies in your own process versus the process that is pumping out those rankings. You get to dive into the stats. You get to sharpen your own process as you formulate the rankings. And, you and I are going through this experience this year of putting together our own rankings. And it's really interesting just looking back. We've done multiple podcasts reviewing your rankings and going back and talking about what goes into these decisions and taking those micro improvements on the process so it's very fruitful exercise to kind of put together your own dynasty rankings. And then I think those are, the biggest two. And since, spoiler alert in the show sheet, we wrote a lot of the same things. So
Yeah.
how about you bring it home with the rest of the things you can do before a dynasty startup?
Well, I think you touched on it. Like you said, like there's all sorts. And if you don't want to, like I'm going to put over our rankings because I feel like they're the best rankings in the industry. But there's several, like I think Mike Clay from ESPN puts out free dynasty rankings. Those are pretty, like if you're going to use a free source, I think that's pretty solid. I don't know. It might be behind a paywall. So if it is, I apologize. But you can always go to Keep Trade Cut as well. It's not the best. That's more of like how the public views players, but it's something that you can reference and look at and go, okay, these players are in this tier or these players are ranked higher than others or whatever, and then you can adjust from there if you want to, and or if you don't want to make your own dynasty rankings. But you touched on it there. I have become a much better dynasty player after talking things through with you, with Tyler Knabley, who's live in the chat tonight, with Cody Carpentier, with Maddie Kiwoom, with Jason Alwine, just with Theo Greminger, with just everybody on staff here, just having conversations like, oh, do you want this player, this player? What do you think of this player's situation? Where do you think this player is going to be in 2 to 3 years down the road? Is it time to sell him? Like these are all the questions that we tackle here on a daily basis on the Player Profiler YouTube channel, which is exactly why you should be subscribed and like the video too if you like what you're seeing tonight. So that to me is a very underrated part. Having a trusted group of experts, of friends, a source of information that you can trust. I feel like Player Profiler is I'd put us up against anybody in the dynasty industry as far as information goes, with all the shows and with everything that we have to offer, there's something for everybody. But the first thing that I do, so like let's say the dynasty startup, you get your draft pick, like you're in the sleeper league or maybe not, maybe you're on MLF or MFL.
MFL, yeah.
But a lot of my leagues are on sleeper. The first thing I do is I get in everybody's DMs. I DM like everybody, and I say, "Hi," I introduce myself. I say, "Hi, my name's Seth. I'm a very active dynasty player. I'm going to be looking to move up and down and all over this draft board. So if you have a trade offer that you want to send, don't hesitate. Here's my Twitter handle, blah blah blah." It's also a good way to meet people and to network, but it's also a good way to let the other managers in your league know, hey, I'm available. I'm open for business. I'm going to get back to your trade offer. It's not going to sit there for 2 or 3 days. I'm going to be active and I'm going to be around, and I'm going to be checking this league. And like a lot of people too make the mistake of going into the dynasty startup with, I have to do a productive struggle or I have to do a win now strategy. And I heard it today from somebody. I think I'll put over the dynasty domain because I was looking over a bunch of different videos that cover the same topic, just curious to see how other people handled it. And he said something that I wish I would have thought of. The best strategy is actually not to have a strategy at all going in. Like, I definitely have a preference of what I want to do in a dynasty startup draft, but being flexible and being able to adjust to your league is so important. Like, if everybody is trying to do the productive struggle, then it might be a good idea to pivot to more of a win now, like more of like a modified win now. I don't really like to go all in and push my chips all the way in a win now. That's just not how I like to roll, but you can do a modified version of that strategy. So being flexible to me is probably the most important thing going in, and being able to pivot to a number of different strategies, not just a win now or a productive struggle. And I would say this is also true. And we were talking about this before the show, and I'll make just a couple points and we can move on to our next question. But don't be an asshole. Okay. Like, don't be the guy in your dynasty league that's like, oh yeah, I know everything. And this is such a terrible trade offer, blah, blah, blah. Like, I've seen it more times than I should in dynasty leagues that I've been in, and I've been playing for a while, not as long as probably Theo, but I've been playing for 7 years, and I've probably seen it like 4 or 5 times where somebody just drops what I call a chat bomb, where it's like, I don't know if you can recover from this, man. I don't like, you've put somebody on blast for a trade that they've made, and it's just never a good idea. It's just never a good idea because everybody's, unless it's just and we can talk about what to do if you see just a horrendous trade go down in your league. The right answer is to DM the league commissioner and go, "Did you see what just happened there? Like, I don't think this something's weird. Something weird's going on here." But that's the best way to deal with it, not to just absolutely destroy the chat. Um, so be fair, be equitable. Don't send lopsided trades. Like, there are dynasty trade calculators out there. If you're ever unsure of what a trade value is, there's the Dynasty Dominator app that I'll go ahead and put over. That's a fantastic resource that we're probably going to plug later on in the show. So there's 1,000 different ways to not be an a-hole in your league, right? And the easiest thing is just not to overreact and just be cordial, and like I said, get in everybody's DMs and just be a sociable manager that people know, hey, if I send Seth a trade offer, he will at least reject it and let me know he's not interested, right? Or we can start this negotiation process. So those are all the things that I would highly suggest people do. And like you said, I would, if you can't develop your own rankings, find a rankings tool as well. But I think that about covers it. So let's pivot to like when the dynasty startup draft begins, Matt. So what are some strategies that you have used in dynasty startup drafts before that have really helped you out?
Yeah. So, ever seen the show Hoarders? If you walked into my dynasty exposure house, you would just see, I mean, late round veteran value after late round veteran value. They're scattered all over the place. I'm a value hoarder, and that's one of the best strategies. And I think it kind of speaks to not having a strategy where if you start getting value, because the late round is when people start, chasing really good rookies, maybe they want to tank, they avoid veterans, or, there's, because so many people want to try and, finesse and do all these out of the box strategies. And that leaves guys on a silver platter for you, like in the late rounds. I've seen Mike Evans go far too late in dynasty startups for multiple years now because people were afraid of his age. And I think there's an immense, just like the NFL draft, trading down or taking the best player available is not a very sexy strategy, but it's a very valuable strategy, because you're going to get talented players in the short term, and you're going to get win now teams that need those talented players. So if you're not a win now team, getting value on Mike Evans is only that much sweeter because you get the actual return on investment, where he's probably like a fourth, fifth round startup pick last year, where he was probably worth a third, maybe higher. You're getting like a 2-round value on Mike Evans. So
yeah, I would almost, and then we'll take a look at our league, and it would be interesting to see like what happened. But I almost promise you that Mike Evans was probably going later than that. But
I have it up, so
okay.
I can try and see real quick. But the point is, like, that's one example of, like Christian Kirk was going in the 9th round. Keenan Allen went in the 9th round. Like, that's an immense value right there. And so be a value hoarder. And then on the late rounds, like when the late rounds, it's youth over everything. Like, I made the mistake of drafting McCole Hardman because I thought I could get some short-term value out of him with Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. What a dumb idea. Like, if you're staring down the barrel and you can't get into any of the rookies and you're going to take one of these worthless veterans, try to just trade the pick for whatever reroll you can in the future. Take a third, fourth round flyer on a rookie next year. It's going to pan out better than trying to draft Justin Shorter in the 22nd round. Like, if the best player available is Justin Shorter in the 22nd round, just trade the pick. But yeah, navigating the mid to late rounds is incredibly important, and it's really easy if you just let the draft come to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. By the way, Mike Evans was taken in the 9th round of our startup, which
that's insane.
Yeah, no, it's especially like that's the ultimate player for like if you're trying to push the chips in. It's a 9th round pick is not even really pushing the chips in. It's just like, well, Mike Evans is there in the 9th round. My team is competitive. I guess I'll take Mike Evans because there's just some players in this world of fantasy football that just apparently transcend time. And, Mike Evans is just one of those players. I would say this. I have some very, I guess, I don't want to say harsh. I'm trying to think of the right word. I have some very strong. There we go. There's some words as the editor of Player Profiler that are strong. I have some very strong opinions about how I believe a dynasty startup should go, just because I've been in so many of them. The one thing I will push back on from now until the day I die is the guy in the chat who's trying to rush along the draft, like the OTC bro guy. The OTC bro guy can go. I'm just gonna say it. He can kick rocks, man. Like, he can go. Like, don't be in a rush. Don't allow yourself to be rushed. If there's 8 hours on the clock, like kickoff is not until September, baby. Like, we have plenty of time to get this thing in, and you have no idea why somebody is on the clock. They could have they probably have kids. They could have a very tough day at work where their attention was divided. That's one of my things. That's my number one thing. I have it on all caps on my show sheet here. Don't be in a rush, and don't allow yourself to be rushed. Because you if there's 8 hours on that clock and you're in that league, everybody agreed to this. Everybody agreed to that 8-hour clock. Don't let some D-bag in the chat go, "Hey Seth, OTC bro, there 2 hours have passed before we made a pick." And every time I have no qualms about doing it now. I say kickoff ain't until September. Let's just chill our tits here, okay? We're good.
The one important clarification, though, is there's a stark difference between being that OTC bro guy and politely, like when a pick goes in, politely just adding the next person and saying, you're up or you're on the clock.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. One is a very polite, like, hey, you might not have all your notifications on for every pick. You might be doing something, just letting you know you're on the clock. And the other is, hurry up. I want to make my 6th round pick before I go to bed.
Exactly. That's a good, thank you for clarifying that, Matt, because there's nothing wrong with especially on Sleeper, it's so slick, like at whoever it is, and you can just tell them that they're on the clock. And I say that don't be rushed, because sometimes you want to give yourself the however amount of time you need to make a deal. Like if you're trying to trade the pick, if you're trying to get all the options on the table for yourself. Like if there's nothing out there, and you've said it 3 or 4 times in the chat, hey, this pick is on the clock, like, and there's no biters, like, okay, maybe you just need to suck it up and make the pick eventually. Like you can wait like the entire 8, like that is a rule, and I'll believe that, like I said, until the day I leave this earth, that we have 8 hours on the clock for a reason, if that's the rule in the league. So anyway, like don't be in a rush, man. It's because startups are so cool and so fun, and there's no reason to rush. You said it. I would say another dynasty strategy that is a basic fundamental, but you should know, is acquire value, not players. Like 95% of the time, trading down is the right answer. I would almost go so far to say is like, I would almost never trade up. The only circumstance where I would trade up in a dynasty startup is if I can get an elite quarterback with insulated value. Like we're talking CJ Stroud, talking Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Like if somebody's offering me that and it's not insanely expensive like it should be for one of those quarterbacks, heck, maybe even Caleb Williams or Anthony Richardson are close to being in that category. I think they could be. Like that's probably the only circumstance I would trade up in a super flex league only. But other than that, I'm not really trading down, or I'm not really trading up, rather. I'm looking to trade down in dynasty startup leagues and acquire as much value as possible. Also, like everybody knows about Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams. Like they all know about these hot rookies, and they're probably valued appropriately, or maybe even somebody's going to take them before they should probably be drafted. But a strategy that's worked for me is just picking some rookies that you like late, and just instead of drafting, like you said, the Justin Shorters of the world, like draft some of these rookies, man. Like draft some of these rookies, like especially this year. Like there's going to be rookies that fall to was Justin Shorter a rookie last year? Did I just F up there?
I mean, maybe I'm gonna look, but I really don't think he was.
Super
I'm
under the
sure he's
radar.
like 25.
Anyway, I could be
23.
spacing there. It's possible that I just said.
Yeah, he was a rookie.
Okay, so I just said live on air that draft some of these rookies. Don't be drafting the Justin Shorters of the world, like the rookies. But anyway, draft the rookies, man. Draft especially this year, where I'm telling everybody that'll listen to me, you're going to want as many 3rd and 4th round picks in these super flex rookie drafts as you can possibly get, because they're like the mock draft that I did last night. Jalen Wright fell to the 3rd round in super flex. Crazy. It's because there's so many other players ahead of him, like the Malachi Corleys, the Roman Wilsons, so many players like Jonathan Brooks that are pushing some of these players down, and it's just a numbers game. So drafting some of these rookies instead of these older veterans later in your dynasty startup, I mean, it's why not take that chance if you like to employ what I call a year one punch strategy, but we'll talk more about that later. So drafting rookies late, I think, is a really good strategy. And again, following the latest news, being tapped into Player Profiler news to make quick, efficient adjustments to your rankings based on the news that comes out. And the last thing I'll talk about is look at what other managers are doing. Like, and I've talked about this a little bit already. Like, is everybody trying to do the productive struggle? Then maybe you should pivot your strategy. Is everybody pushing their chips in to win now, which is what people were doing in our original Dynasty Roundtable startup draft? There were a ton of people going win now. So I was like, okay, I get to do what I always love to do and punt year one and go young and trade back. And so that's exactly what I did. So the important thing to remember, and maybe the best piece of advice to give somebody in a dynasty startup draft, is to be flexible. And like I said, keep the lines of communication open. And I think if you do that, you're going to let the value come to you, like Matt talked about, and just make the best possible decision when you're on the clock in the circumstance that you find yourself in. And you just never know what kind of deals can materialize at the 8th hour. Like that's why I'm like, don't be rushed into making a quick decision if you don't feel like it's the right decision to make. So now let's talk about we'll talk about this, and then we'll go over our dynasty startup from last year. Matt, what do you think? Like, you could take this in a couple different ways. What's the best dynasty startup strategy, or what is your favorite dynasty startup strategy? Maybe those are two different answers.
Yeah. So real quick to clear up the whole Justin Shorter shenanigans, for whatever reason, I swapped him and Deontay Hardy, which is why I was thinking it was the old dusty veteran that had just signed in Buffalo. But no, Justin Shorter was a rookie. But anyway, my favorite dynasty strategy is the one I tried to pull off in our draft and didn't execute as well as I would have liked to. And I'll talk more about why that was in our next segment. But it's called, you like to name your strategy, so I had to name mine. And it's called the middle. And if you've ever seen Always Sunny in Philadelphia, we try to execute the old max strategy, which is, playing both sides so that you always win. And essentially the goal here is to build a balanced team so that you can either build upon it quickly or very quickly tear it down. And so you have a very talented youth core. So trading down if you can, but also not punting all of your first 4 picks in the draft to acquire some staples. So, it was a super flex. So I had 2 QBs, my wide receiver 1 and my RB 1, all under the age of 26 through the first 4 rounds. And so that was my talented core that I was going to build off of. And like I said earlier, I love to kind of just start taking best player available and build up a stack of value. So I tried to essentially do that in the middle rounds, build up my wide receiver core, get a stockpile of running backs. I didn't go too hard into the running backs because I felt like our draft, the way the draft board worked out, didn't necessarily favor spending premiums on running backs that didn't necessarily. I was always facing the top of a bat, like the lower tier, and then I just you keep punting the position and no one ends up coming back around. But essentially, you're getting that youth. You're trying to stockpile that value in the later rounds. And within the first few weeks, depending on how outside factors play out, you should understand whether or not you're going to be winning or losing throughout the rest of the season. And you get guys like Keenan Allen in the 9th round so that you can ship them off to a contender for the right price, get some new draft picks. Or Keenan Allen's a wide receiver 2, your team's playing really well, we'll buy a running back and we're going to really make a push, or we'll buy a quarterback and we're really going to make a push. So I think playing the middle, getting that core early, allows you to really just play off of everybody else in the middle to late rounds. And then you have a team that has upside, has stability, has youth, isn't too old or too young. And within the first few weeks, because things go so differently than we planned them. And so in the first few weeks, like say I would have finagled my way into Mike Evans and Keenan Allen, right? So I have 2 of the top 5 receivers in the league. You got Justin Fields, who I thought was going to be good. Like things can swing so many different ways, and you can find yourself in a situation, even if you're trying to punt and win long term and go rebuild, you could find yourself in the middle of the pack, right? Maybe like only getting the 105 after trying to punt because
That's
things
a real
are
thing
so crazy in football. So I like to be kind of in the middle and see where the variance takes me and then, go with it.
See, I like what you said, but to me, like for me, That is not how I like to dynasty, Matt Babich. That is your strategy and my strategy would do not mix.
That's why we don't have the same teams.
It's like oil and water, because I referenced it earlier. I call this I don't like to use the productive struggle, because I guess that's what it is. But it's more like, I call it the year one punt, because the productive struggle, I mean, how long are we going to be productively struggling here? I only want to be struggling for 1 year, and strategically to build a super team. And I believe this is, if this is executed properly, and it's hard to do, it's not easy. The year one punt is the quickest way to a super team in dynasty fantasy football. And there are three tenets of the year one punt that I will, and this show is called the best dynasty strategy. And this is why it's called the best dynasty strategy, because I'm giving you what I believe is the best dynasty startup strategy right now. So tenet one of the year one punt is acquire youthful ascending assets. All right. So you are acquiring youth that is still going to produce for your fantasy team. Buy low, sell high. Like, I know it's simple, but it's so true in dynasty. I don't want to buy anybody at the top of their value, or at the perceived peak of their value. Tenet number 2 is trade back. And I will say this: don't just trade back to trade back. Get fair value. The Player Profiler has a trade calculator if you're ever unsure. And when you trade back, acquire as many first round rookie picks as possible. So you are getting, let's just say, for your second round startup pick, you are getting maybe a 6th round or a 5th round startup pick plus a first round rookie pick next year. So you're turning one pick into multiple shots, especially if you believe that there's not really a huge difference here. And we'll go over, like, my team. Like, some people are going to say, oh no, you're crazy. Like, the second round's clearly a different tier than the 5th round. Like, we're going to go over what I was able to get in like the 4th, 6th, 7th round. Like, it's every year it's seemingly like this, that you can get like a player in the 5th round that will be valued more highly than a player like in the 2nd or 3rd round. So try to get as many rookie picks as possible. So you're getting multiple picks back for that single pick. And I'll say, like, obviously this is a gamble, but I feel like it gives you more bites at the apple, more shots at the dartboard. And then the third tenet of this strategy is fill essential positions. You never want to be negotiating from a place of desperation, especially in the Superflex league. Like, you're going to want to draft quarterbacks. So fill those starting quarterback positions in a Superflex league. If it's a tight end premium league, this is a 2 points per tight end premium league that we play in. So this goes back to knowing your settings. So I've got some good tight ends on my team. So I filled quarterback, I filled tight end. Now I traded one of those quarterbacks away later, to a win now team. And I like to get wide receivers too. So I like to get quarterbacks in a super flex, tight ends in a tight end premium, especially in an ultra tight end premium, and wide receivers. This is why I don't care about running backs, especially because I love the year one punt. I don't like running backs, because running backs, especially veteran running backs, are the easiest piece to add, in my opinion, because there's always somebody trying to get rid of a veteran running back. Like, how many years have people tried to get rid of Derrick Henry? They're like, get Derrick Henry off my fantasy team. He's going to fall apart like the pumpkin in Cinderella. Like, he's just going to fall apart one day. And so far, that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened to Derrick Henry. Who knows? Who knows when that's going to happen? But there's always somebody out there willing to trade a veteran running back. There just always is. So I feel like that's the last piece of my dynasty puzzle. And when we come back from first of all, I want to, so those are the three tenets of my year one punt strategy that I like to employ in most dynasty startups, unless everybody's going that route. But Matt, any final thoughts before we take a informative segment break? And then when we come back from that break, we will go over our dynasty startup from last year.
I think we're ready to kick it to the Podfather.
Okay, and maybe we'll get in some of your questions as well as we go over this league. So we are going to get a quick informative segment break, but when we come back, as I said, we are going to cover or go over the draft that we did 1 year ago, where Seth and Matt both implemented those strategies that we talked about. But first, the Dynasty Dominator ad from the Podfather.
Now, I know many of you are looking for a secret weapon for your Dynasty League, and I have it. It's called the Dynasty Dominator app. You go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's right there. It's $5 to download, and then every year it's $5 to load the next incoming class of rookies. You can add Superflex, add tight end premium. It's incredible because it allows you to look up players. It allows you to vote on whether a player is a buy, hold, or sell, and then see the market sentiment on that player. And you can compare their lifetime value rating from PlayerProfiler to their Dynasty ADP at the FFPC, all in the price lookup tool. And beyond that, we have a trade analyzer, so you'll never lose another Dynasty trade again. And in our settings, you can set this is a win now team, this is a rebuilding team, and then we let you compare players. Look at their metrics side by side, prospect metrics, NFL metrics. It's all there. It's $5 in the App Store. There's some add-ons for Superflex and to buy the upcoming rookie class. Every year, you're going to spend $5 on this thing, and it's going to be well worth it.
The Dynasty Dominator app. It is quite possibly one of the best, like $5 you can spend every year.
No doubt.
Also, there's a show on Sundays that is pretty good. Right, Matt?
Yeah, it's called the Dynasty Warzone. So Memphis Young and Jerry Sinclair are the old married couple of Dynasty football, but their minds are just as sharp as their personalities are loud. I'll put it that way, and I mean it in the utmost compliment because we had them on Dynasty Roundtable. We had the pleasure, and it was a very entertaining show. And I catch the Warzone, and there's always something entertaining going on. The way those two go at it it's both informative and entertaining, and they are live Sunday nights on the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Sundays at 7 p.m. Central, I believe, is their start time. And they feature one of the best segments in fantasy football, Good People, Bad Tweets. So if you want to see that segment, catch the Dynasty Warzone at 7 p.m. Central on Sundays on the Player Profiler YouTube. Before we get into the draft, I do want to say one thing on the Dynasty Dominator. Matt Kelly says, never lose a trade again. And you see on the picture the value difference in the trade. I want to make a very important distinction in Dynasty football. The score does not dictate who wins the trade. It's to give you a approximate value summation of the assets going back and forth. What's 15 points if you're acquiring future capital and moving towards your goal? So a lot of people use trade calculators as a self-only tool. I will use my trade calculator to arrive at my decisions and send them to you. But what's the deal? What's the goal of a trade? It's to get on the same page as your counterpart and make a transaction. The best way to do that is to have a evaluation tool like the Dynasty Dominator app that can be a third-party mediator, so to speak. And the amount of times we used to always say it in my home league, like don't tell like him about the Dynasty Dominator app. We don't want him to know about it. But we stopped doing that, and instead we started having discussions centered around what the Dynasty Dominator app would tell us and what we think about the values of these players. And we've used that app in conjunction with one another to get more deals done than we did when we hid it from everybody. So one of my biggest pieces of advice that I left off earlier in the segments is that having a third-party mediator like the Dynasty Dominator app can actually help you get a lot more deals done because it allows you to communicate effectively with your counterpart and reach an agreement.
It's very well said. It's very well said. And it gives you a frame of reference too. And, like if you're unsure, and sometimes, having played this for 7 years, like I think, like, I'm pretty sure like, I like this trade, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to accept it or at least make a minor counter. But it never hurts to just plug it in the Dynasty Dominator trade analyzer. It just never hurts to see,
Right.
like, okay, like, is what I'm thinking on par with, with what Player Profiler's rankings and evaluations, lifetime value ratings, all that stuff. It's all good information. And sometimes, like, you're right. Like, I love what you said. And I think that's maybe one of the more actionable tips that I could give, is that it all depends on where your dynasty team is. Like, if you feel like you're a piece or two away, like, getting that elite player on your team or getting a veteran on your team, will you lose that trade technically in the Dynasty Dominator app or the trade analyzer? Like, if you feel like that's a piece that you need for your team to win a championship, especially if you're late in the season and you're at the top of the standings, and you have a running back go down with injury, maybe that's a trade you lose to give yourself a chance at the championship. That's fine. That to me, that's what Dynasty's all about, is winning championships or giving yourself the best opportunity to do so. Like, where I probably wouldn't trade for a veteran is, right now, unless you're acquiring value, right? So
Yep.
those situations, like, you can really use trade calculators, and knowing who uses what trade calculator can help you too. So you can plug things into maybe the Dynasty trade calculator and say, oh, it's fair in the Dynasty trade calculator, but over here on Player Profiler's trade calculator, it's heavily sided towards me, like, so using different trade, it's always like, I love it when people send me those screenshots and they're like, hey bro, this isn't even close to being a fair trade. It's like, well, in my trade calculator, or in the Player Profiler trade calculator, it actually was pretty fair. So that gives me more information about you that I can use against you. Anyway, not that I would do that to anybody in this league, Matt. I would never do that because we're all using Player Profiler stuff. So, do you want to talk about your team first or my team?
Yeah, I guess. All right. So,
your team?
The one very important aspect that I forgot to that I didn't mention in my strategy is that you have to be very, very careful at what threshold you set your risk adversity limit to. Now, I've admitted it before, and I'll admit it to the day I die. I'm more risk averse than most fantasy football players because it's low stakes. I'm in low stakes leagues and I want to have fun. And that generally means I'm going to do things like shoot the moon with Justin Fields at the 1-6. I had every reason to believe that there was no chance that Justin Fields was ever going to be more valuable than Lamar Jackson in Dynasty. And
we should probably clarify, this is a draft that we did last year. So this is last
summer.
Yeah. Last summer. So if you're just tuning in and you're thinking, oh my God, Matt took Justin Fields where? Okay. I just wanted to
QB
make that,
Chicago,
I just wanted to make that point of clarification. So this is just us kind of going over like our strategy that we just talked about, which you should definitely watch back if you weren't with us. But go ahead. I just want to make that clarification.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, this team would have been immensely better had I selected Lamar Jackson, where I should have. And I sat there for, 4 or 5 hours with the 8-hour clock. Fields, Jackson, Fields or Jackson, Fields or Jackson. I just really believed at the time. And it's easy to look back now and laugh at it. And I'm okay with that. I never have a problem with talking about my cold takes. But, in the summer, there were a lot, and believe me, I made sure I knew that there were at least some sharp people I followed that were agreeing with my stance. And there were. So I'm not the only one. And there was, a crowd of people who believed that Justin Fields wouldn't turn into what's happened now with him, trading, being traded and everything. So, enough about that pick. It was bad. But what I was going for, since I was in the top 7, was, young quarterback to captain my team, turn around with Breece Hall at the 2-7. I just, he's the RB2 in Dynasty, RB1, depending on who you ask. And I'm really happy with that pick. And that's the middle strategy, right? Like Breece Hall I have a few years to figure it out with Breece Hall, or, this would be the perfect year. If things don't work out for me this year, I'll tell you this much: Breece Hall is not going to be on my team. So he's the perfect asset to where like he has that early window and he's a generational talent. If I'm a win now team, that's a guy I want on my team. But if I need to punt, then I'm going to use Breece Hall, who's going to be RB, top 3 RB next year, and get some capital out of him. DK Metcalf was another. Just looking back at it, I don't really know what I was doing. I think in the 3rd round, I was not expecting guys like Keenan Allen and Mike Evans to go all the way in the 9th. Like revisionist history, if I would have known that that's how the draft board was going to play out, because look what happens after in the shaded. We have Kenneth Walker, Jacobs, Harris, Pierce, Stevenson, Henry, Eckler, Etienne, Dobbins, Swift, Chubb. This arsenal of running backs started getting drafted and this is why I stress so much about just letting the draft come to you, because I panicked to go up and get an alpha receiver 1 in DK Metcalf when I could have just waited, grabbed a guy like DJ Moore or somebody else. But as you can see, like I traded away a lot of my middle round picks that I think I could have gotten a lot of value with if I used them to trade down or stay at the pick. And so a lot of what I just preached is almost the exact opposite of what I did. And it's because I think I had a solid strategy going into it, but I executed the middle of the draft so poorly and I completely bungled my first pick. And that's going to happen in Dynasty. So my fun task is putting this mess together, because there's a lot of talent there, but it's not looking pretty. Tony Pollard did not pan out. I think he's going to be better in Tennessee than he was last year from an efficiency standpoint. Not sure what the touches are going to look like. DJ Moore, probably a sell high asset right now. But then, we start getting into the later rounds, and like Rashad in the 7th, I feel like was a really good pick.
Trey McBride in the
13th was awesome.
And a 2-point. This is a 2-point per reception for tight ends too. Look at Chuba Hubbard in the 19th round.
In the 19th. No reason to take McCole Hardman. I know we said take rookies, but honestly, like even Tyler Scott, there was no reason for that. Henry was a decent pick. Mac Hollins, no reason to be taking guys like Max Hollins and Braxton Berrios. Quarterbacks, it doesn't necessarily apply to. Grab an Andy Dalton, a guy who might start 3 or 4 games and be an important spot start. And
Heineke could have been a guy that you flipped like to a team that needed a starting quarterback, for who knows, right? Like,
yeah, if only I didn't need a starting quarterback, because I drafted Brissett. I mean, just so sure that he was going to end up starting.
Well, yeah, everybody thought that. I think like most people, I felt like.
So I was like, I'll take Fields. I'll put in Brissett for a little bit, and then I'll have Kyler come back in week 10. And then Brissett never played. Heineke never took over. It took Heineke way longer to take over than I would have thought. So by the time that happened, by the time Heineke took over, I was trading to get Gardner Minshew because Justin Fields was out as well. And somehow I have the 8th pick. Somehow amongst all of this, I have the 8th pick.
Yeah. And so like, I don't think your team, like you hit on some of these later round picks. So you're kind of crushing yourself, but Rachaad White was a good pick. DJ Moore turned out to be a good pick because his value rose. Kyler Murray in the 3rd round seems criminal. I don't know how we let that happen. Like,
yeah, the ACL. I mean,
that's right. That's right.
This was peak. Cardinals are going to tank for Caleb.
They were going to collapse for Caleb. This is why
peak.
Yeah, this is why you can't listen to those narratives out there in the media, and you just have to trust your evaluation of your rankings and the talent. Because the truth is, let's say, like in hindsight, and this is me playing the hindsight police role. there was like Kyler Murray, even if the Cardinals decided to trade him, he would find a spot some like Kyler Murray is too talented of a quarterback. And before you cut me off at the pass with Justin Fields, okay? Speaking as a resident Bears fan, Justin Fields is nowhere near the accurate passer that Kyler Murray is, okay? So I know that Kyler Murray lacks size. However, Kyler Murray, and I still believe this with Justin Fields too, is Kyler Murray's a top 15, if not a top 10 quarterback in this league, for sure top 15. Justin Fields is a top 20, top 25 quarterback in this league. You can't tell me that he doesn't deserve a starting job somewhere. I mean, look at what's going on in Denver right now. Like, you seriously, Sean Payton, you couldn't have got off your high horse of just, I can't deal with these sorts of players, and just traded a 5th round pick for Justin Fields. Seriously? You're really going to roll with Jarrett Stidham? Is this what we're going to do? It's the most idiotic, dumb way to do business that I've ever seen. I don't know.
Is he just punting this year? It kind of feels like
he must be. I mean, tanking for Shadar, for
Sanders.
Shadar
okay,
Sanders.
That would be sick though. I'm okay with it if that's what happens.
I don't know. Deion said he's not going to let his sons go to anywhere with cold weather.
Yeah,
Denver's
no chance. I feel like Prime and Sean Payton aren't two people that would get along.
Probably. Yeah, you never know. Football guys.
Maybe. I mean, they're winners.
Yeah. So anyway, I got on my soapbox there for a minute, but Kyler Murray there is the point was what a tremendous value, because now he's more valuable. And I think you did okay. I think you've got some good foundational pieces here, but any final thoughts before we move on to my wild and crazy team?
Yeah, just one. I want to be very clear that Justin Fields was a unanimous 1st round pick in Superflex Dynasty last summer. So that's just where we were at. All right. I know I took him early. He was a 1st round pick.
If you want to be contrarian, you could say like early 2nd round at the absolute latest, like early to mid 2nd round in a Superflex league. So anywho, and we'll get to some of your comments here. I don't know. We kind of talked about a lot about this, but this is my wild team here. As you can see, I acquired a lot of those middle round picks. I had 3 4th round picks, and I was able to acquire 4 rookie picks, or 3 extra rookie picks, and dealing all these players away. So you can see what I ended up with. And I made some good picks, and I made some not so good picks. Like Mac Jones is looking like a dud of a pick right now. Geno Smith and Derek Carr. I mean, I was able to fill there you go, like going to the quarterback. Jamison Williams, not looking like a great pick. However, Drake London's looking like a pretty good value at that selection. Yep. Sam Laporta is now the consensus tight end 1 in Dynasty, I believe, according to most people.
That was a great pick.
James Cook, pretty good pick. Rashad Bateman, not so much. And again, like, we're going to scroll down here because you're going to see, like, I have other players that I hit on. And again, this comes back to taking rookies. Rashee Rice in the 12th round. Mm-hmm. Cole Kmet somehow made it to the 13th round. Luke Musgrave, same story, who's going to be the starting tight end for a really up and coming Green Bay offense. We scroll all the way down to Keaton Mitchell in the 24th round, who I know tore his ACL, but once he's healthy, he's young enough to recover in a good amount of time. He's going to be a factor with Derrick Henry in that Baltimore backfield now that J.K. Dobbins is likely not going to be there. And then, I went all silly with the last pick and took Sean Clifford because I thought he was going to beat out Jordan Love, but that's a take we don't.
Aiden O'Connell, though, like, that was, let's not forget that. Like, despite him not being that good, you grabbed, and I can't believe I side-eyed the draft to prove it. I took McCole Hardman over Aiden O'Connell. That feels really stupid looking back on it. I can't believe, because you grabbed a starting quarterback in the 20th round. He started all year.
Yep. And I should have traded him away too, but nobody was willing to give me what I thought he was worth.
That's the tough part about Dynasty.
Yeah. So I was trying to get a second round pick for him, and I just could never do it. It's probably because we play against some pretty sharp people in this league. We got Maddie and Cody and Emerson Beery and my good friend Dane Danforth, who's in multiple leagues as well, and Aditya Foldiori and many, many others. We have your dad in here. He's a good player. So anyway, like,
sure is.
What I was able to do, I feel, is I hit on enough of these picks that I was able, and I made some trades later as well, that I was able to establish a good foundation for myself. Now, the problem is that we talked about was the year one punt. Ideally, I would be picking at the top of the draft, and somehow I almost made the playoffs. So that's not great. I had the 105 pick in the rookie draft. Ideally, I would have tanked well enough to be in like the top 3, because I absolutely hate, and I will reiterate this, I absolutely hate finishing in the middle, because mediocrity, like I just do not like it in Dynasty. I feel like it's easy to get stuck there, which is why I'm not the biggest fan of your strategy, to be honest, which is why I like to deal in extremes. And I get it. It's risky. So I understand that this is very extreme, but this is like how, A, this is how I like to Dynasty, and B, this is where the draft naturally took me, because there were a lot of people that were going all in to win it. So I'm just going to highlight Matty Kiwoom's team, for example. Look at this. He's got multiple 3rd round picks. He went super veteran heavy. And like, I saw Matty Kiwoom do this, and I was like, okay, this is a guy that is trying to win now. Let's go to Aditya Foldiori. He traded up into the 1st round to get Bijan. I was like, okay, well, if he's going to do that.
This was the tough thing about our league, because I feel like before I even had the time to reach an agreement on anything with anyone, Seth had already traded his first 3 picks. And so, like, you had the people that went all in, and then you had the one who went all out, and now all of a sudden it's harder to get anything done. Like, he set the market at a pace where everyone else was then like, I think I'm good where I'm at for the first few rounds. And so, I mean, it's an advantage, right, to like be early, because what happened was Seth got to execute his exact strategy while everyone else, like, he just kind of froze the market because of how extreme the strategy was. It kind of caught everyone off guard. And, you know, I got to commend you that it was really sharp.
Well, I didn't quite execute it as well as I would have liked, to be honest. But I do feel like heading into this year, I have 4 picks in the rookie draft. And I'll say this, usually when I trade for rookie picks, I assume that not all of them are going to be at the bottom. And so literally, guys, so this is why I say it didn't work out in my favor. I have my rookie pick, which is the 105, but literally the 3 that I got, the 110, the 111, and the 112, that tells me that I'm playing against really sharp people who know what they're doing when they're trading up into a draft. So kudos to those guys who I made trades with, because that's not ideal. And I probably, in a vacuum, considering what I gave up, like, I was hoping that I would get like the 104. And so like I would get TJ Hawkinson and Malik Neighbors for whoever let's see, where's my draft position? Oh, for Deshaun Watson. Okay. So maybe I win that trade anyway, because Deshaun Watson's there, but let's just say Anthony Richardson, right? So I probably lose the TJ Hawkinson and Adonai Mitchell for Anthony Richardson. I probably am losing that trade, but it's a risk, right? It's a calculated risk that I'm taking, thinking like, okay, like, I don't think that you're probably not going to win the championship. You're probably going to be good, but there's a chance too that your team, things don't go right for you. There's a lot less outs for you. And there's a good chance that I wind up with a halfway decent pick, even though you traded up, right? because I am taking assets away from. I am taking picks away from you too later on if I get multiple startup picks as well. So again, it didn't work out as well as I would have liked, but any final thoughts on this strategy? But you're right though. Like, I'm confident in this strategy. It's not something that I would recommend to everybody doing their first time. In fact, if you're doing a startup for the first time, I would highly recommend that you go Matt's route, or just try to win, like just stick there and maybe use a trade calculator if you're unsure of any trades that you're making. Like, I would go super conservative the first time and just kind of watch and experience it as it unfolds. So we have some comments. Any thoughts on that, Matt, before we get to some of these comments?
You wrapped it up really nicely. Yeah, I think we can answer some of these questions in the chat.
Okay, I liked what Anthony said. Seth is right. And then I didn't read the rest of it, but yeah, Seth is right. Communication is imperative. I just wanted to bring that up. Let's see. We have Tony. What's your thoughts on a third QB in Superflex? Do I trade up from 9 to get a 4th or 5th quarterback? What are your thoughts on that, Matt? And I'm going to change the screen so people can actually see us.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused on the question because he asked us about our 3rd quarterback and then the 4th and 5th quarterback. So I
think what he's saying is, and this is something that I've been torn with as I go through my process, is how valuable do you think that 3rd quarterback is in a Superflex league?
Yeah, I'm not trying to overspend on it, but it also depends on who my first 2 quarterbacks are. So look at the route that you took, right? Like, you have Geno Smith and then you did, I believe you went in Mac Jones, then Derek Carr.
I think
no, flip that. You went Carr and then Jones, which makes sense. But you're sitting there with Geno Smith and Derek Carr. You need a little bit of insurance there. So it was smart to take Mac Jones, as a lot of these usable quarterbacks were starting to dry up pretty quickly, as you could see that 3 were drafted on the run over to Mac Jones. So myself, I wasn't super worried about my 3rd quarterback, which was strange because my quarterback 2 is out for the first 10 weeks. But if you start with Herbert and Goff, like my dad did, like, you don't necessarily need to push your chips in on a 3rd quarterback. You're doing just fine. So yeah, it depends on your structure, but try not to overvalue the 3rd quarterback.
We have Tyler, our guy, PPR Tyler on Twitter. You need some guidance on trading startup picks. Do you guys have any tips? The first thing I would say is, I know you got it, Tyler, is the Dynasty Dominator app can really help. But as far as like trading startup picks, my strategy is wild and crazy. So I don't know, unless you're really comfortable with that, then I probably wouldn't do it, especially if you're new to a Dynasty startup. But I would just say find fair value. Like, if you I wouldn't necessarily recommend trading up, like we talked about. Trading back is usually the right answer. And and I would just take your time and find the right deal, as my dogs are going absolutely batshit crazy in the background.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit during the show as well, so I think we've touched on that nicely.
We have Sam Babich, put together a decent team while acquiring 4 for. Okay, so this is me putting myself over by putting this comment on the screen.
I highlighted it.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at my team, but I don't know. And this is my Dane, who's in this league, the win never approach. He knows better than that. I'll be hoisting the trophy this year, you bet. We have another question. Should I try to trade my 1-4 for a 1-9, 1-10, and 1-11 in a rookie dynasty draft? What do you think, Seth? And this question is directed just to me. I think if you could, that 1-4, you got to think about it this way. It's probably, if you're in a Superflex league, it's going to go Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison. Then who knows, right? Like I would take Malik Neighbors at the 1-3, But that 1-4 is probably going to be Jaden Daniels, Drake May, somebody like that. Maybe even Rome Odunze. He's getting a lot of steam. Heck, it could even be JJ McCarthy. At the 1-9, at the 110, 111, pretty consensus from my mock drafts. You're looking at Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr. That's what you're looking at. I'd probably do it if you can get all of that in return. Just because, but it depends on who's going to be there. If you're telling me Malik Neighbors is there, I want Malik Neighbors, but that's a hell of a value for the 1-9, 110, and 111. But I would love to know who's there at the 1-4, because if it's one of these quarterbacks, if it's Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy, let's not forget about that. And we don't have enough time on this show to talk about it, but there's some real steam around JJ McCarthy, and it could all be BS. That I'm acknowledging that. But there's some real legs to this. JJ McCarthy's going to get drafted ahead of Jaden Daniels and Drake May. It could happen. It only takes one NFL GM to think and feel that way. So who knows? And that could change. That could change how this how this rookie drafts unfold. So I would say yes if you're making me do it right. If you're making me make a decision right now, I would say I want the 1-9, 110, and 111. I would do it, but obviously I want to know who's there, because if Malik Neighbors is there, I'm going to take Malik Neighbors. We'll take one more, and then we gotta get out of here. Question from Anthony. He's sitting at the 107 in a league. 2 guys tanked last year, now sitting at 1 and 2. Both trying to get to 7. I'm guessing Bowers, Odunze, JJ, trade the pick, wait and trade, make the pick. I guess he's asking if you would trade out of the 107. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if there's enough context to fully answer it, but with what we're given, I'm a fan of trading out of the 107 to get some value, especially if you can get a reroll with a team that might think that they're a 107 away from being competitive. Those types of risks are usually ones where you end up getting a 4th, 5th pick in the draft the year after. So I'm okay with trading it without waiting and see who's there, with who's typically there at 7. But if Odunze is there, I would want to be drafting him. I don't know if he will be at 107 anymore.
I don't think he's going to be. It might be a hot take, but I think there's a real chance that Odunze gets drafted ahead of Malik Neighbors in the NFL draft. It wouldn't shock me. He's unbelievably good. I think this narrative, one of these wide receivers has to fail, is just total BS. I think all these 3 top receivers are as good as I've ever seen as at the top of a class.
Yep.
Well, Matt, plug what you have to plug as we end the show. What do you have going on around the Player Profiler streets?
Yeah, so you're going to be hearing more about this throughout all the Player Profiler channels, but the rookie guide is coming out, and you'll be able to see the work from Ian Miller, Josh Larkey, Theo Greminger, a lot of Player Profilers greats. I know there's some people who I don't even know that are going to be in it. John Laub. Will be in it. And you'll be able to see a write-up of mine on Xavier Worthy in there. So pleased to be able to contribute to the rookie guide for the first season. And then, get ready for the Player Profiler draft kit. I'm happy to be, having a little part in that as well. It's really early on. So, but the team reviews and everything, I believe, come out a little bit before the actual draft kit. So pleased to work on that as well. You're going to be, it's draft season. So if your friends and your family don't know that the Player Profiler draft kit is coming, go ahead and educate them, tell them it's coming, because we improve on it every year. And I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what we put out this year, because the content just keeps getting better. So that's going to be so much fun. And then you can catch me live on the Player Profiler News YouTube for Player Profiler Today on Saturdays. And that airs at 6 p.m. Central on Saturdays. So on the Player Profiler News YouTube, it's running 5 days a week. Jack Kavanaugh, Ahan Runkta, Bradley Stalder, Toomey, I'm just gonna apologize. I don't know Toomey's last name, but that's my bad. I apologize.
Okay.
But we have 5 great hosts on Player Profiler today. Go check it out. Player Profiler News YouTube.
Yeah, and at Babich_Matt10 on Twitter. Go follow him there. I really believe that Matt is like a lot of, not to distinguish the compliment I'm about to give you. We have a lot of what I believe are the up and coming fantasy football analysts here at Player Profiler. Like a lot of those guys on Player Profiler News, like know what they're talking about. They might not have a large audience, but now's the time to get in on the ground floor with those guys. And if you're not subscribed to the Player Profiler News YouTube channel, I don't know how those guys do it. They're constantly putting out shorts. Player Profiler Today rather is now over there, and that's a live stream that happens every single day, even on the weekends, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. These are things that I should probably know for certain as the YouTube manager at playerprofiler.com. But it's crazy the amount of content that they're putting out and the amount of actionable information. It's the easiest way really to stay tapped in and make adjustments on the fly to your dynasty rankings as well. So, and it's free. That's the best part. And like I say every week on this show, I feel like I say it every week. To me, Player Profiler, the amount of free information that's available is still astounds me. I don't know why our founder, the Podfather, has not put some of it behind a paywall yet, but it's the best free information out there. And you can do us a favor, subscribe to the all-in package, subscribe to the Dynasty Deluxe package if you're into Dynasty and you're not in, if you're not into DFS and everything. There are packages you can choose from that aren't, that are either DFS, Dynasty, redraft specific. So you can do that as well and be tapped into our draft kit, our rookie guide. Our rookie guide's coming very soon. And that's something that, again, that I'm contributing to again. So all those plugs, and you can follow me on Twitter at Seth_Diewold, YouTube, same deal. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, nobody cares about Aaron Rodgers. Apparently he's not running for vice president now. He's going to be playing football. Don't worry. We're going to have the Aaron Rodgers experience where all lights and bright shining light bulbs are going to be on Aaron Rodgers. And I'm really trying to get a reaction out of Matt Babich right now, and it's not working. Wiseman for Heisman. Nobody cares about Aaron Rodgers. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.